Welcome to the Power of Partnership podcast. I'm Riane Eisler, President of the Center for Partnership Systems. This podcast brings you voices from the partnership movement, people using partnership practices to build a world that values caring, nature, and shared prosperity. The Power of Partnership podcast is hosted by Cherry Jacobs Pruitt, a health policy and partnership scholar. And now on to today's POP podcast episode.
Laura, on behalf of Riane Eisler and the entire Center for Partnership Systems team, I want to welcome you to the Power of Partnership podcast.
Thank you. I'm honored to be here, Cherry.
So you have quite an illustrious international career as an executive in the fashion industry and as a leader in the conscious capitalism movement. So before we start learning more about that work specifically, let's start by you just sharing a little bit about how you learned about Riane Eisler and the partnership movement.
Riane Eisler has been a hero of mine since I read The Chalice and the Blade. I read it in the early 90s, and it changed my perspective, my ideas about how to function in the business world, because I was in the fashion industry by that time. I would say it didn't just change my ideas, but it changed my thinking and my ideals. And so she became a hero for me in terms of what was possible, moving from domination to partnership and partnerism. I had not had it explained to me like that. And it is so fundamental, pervasive. And after that, I changed the way I worked as well. So she made a very big impact on me. And I began to think about how to do business differently, but I didn't know about conscious capitalism until 2017. So I'm standing in line at a Whole Foods store, and you have to wait in line, and there's these magazines on either side. And I see this magazine called Conscious Company Magazine. I'm going, okay. And the reason I picked it up and the reason I bought it is because Eileen Fisher was on the cover. And Eileen Fisher is the female fashion designer who I've always admired. And her company, Eileen Fisher, is the true conscious company. So I bought the magazine. I read about this philosophy called conscious capitalism, and the rest is history. I got involved. And at that time, I was working for Ralph Lauren. So it was a very timely moment for me to get introduced to this philosophy called conscious capitalism.
So as a way to start moving into the conversation about what that looks like specifically, can you give our audience a kind of high-level introduction to what is conscious capitalism?
Basically, conscious capitalism means doing business so that you help people and the planet, or at the very least, you do not hurt people or the planet. Capitalism has been around a long time, and I am a capitalist, Cherry, but I believe there is a better way to do it. There is a new game in town, and it is called conscious capitalism, or some people call it stakeholder capitalism, or triple bottom line capitalism, or, to use Riane's term, caring capitalism. You know, after reading The Chalice and the Blade, I then read The Real Wealth of Nations, which is all about creating a caring economy and very, very much presenting the basic tenets of what I'd call conscious capitalism. I then read, I had a chance to read her book on education for children, which this book is the most amazing book I cannot even begin to tell you, because at the time that I was reaching, the pinnacle of my what I'd call fashion career in the corporate world, I was also realizing that I was going to have to think about my legacy and what was I going to be proud of when I left, the fashion industry. And that was that moment, especially 2017, when I saw that magazine and learned about it. I realized maybe I'd always been an unconscious conscious capitalism, but there were other people. I had a tribe finally. I had people. I wrote a children's book for the conscious capitalism community. They asked me to write it in 2019. And that is another amazing story, because that's when I got to actually get to know Riane. I asked her for a quote. I sent out to all these people, and Riane was one of my heroes and famous, and I thought she won't respond, or, somebody in her office will. Riane Eisler herself responded to me, and I got to speak to her, get to know her, and she provided the most amazing quote for my book. And if I may, I'd like to just read it right now, because I think it kind of puts it all into perspective.
Beautiful. Please do.
Okay, this is the book. And it's a children's book. And she said, the conventional view of wealth is money and possessions and property. But the real wealth of a nation consists of the contributions of its people and of nature. We need an economic system that gives visibility and value to the work of caring for people and our Mother Earth. Study after study shows that what people truly find valuable are relationships, meaning, service, and a sense of purpose, a higher purpose. Conscious capitalism is a way to do business that can deliver these critically needed values. Thank you, Riane.
Beautiful. So can you give our audience a synopsis of what they can, what the book's about?
Absolutely. Well, it's called The ABCs of Conscious Capitalism for Kids because it's the ABCs. There's 26 little bitty chapters, one for every letter of the alphabet. And it is illustrated by a brilliant young man named Brent Metcalf, and he gets credit. Without an illustrator, this book would fall very flat. It's wonderful. It gets children engaged, and every chapter, every letter has a quote from a famous person or somebody that I respect. It has an explanation, and it has activities. So it's really, I hope, and I think it has been a real fun interactive book for children. The sweet spot is like age 10, so middle school. And I will share one thing. The first time that I had an event with children was with a Girl Scout troop. And it was in 2020. The book came out in early 2020, and then we all went into lockdown. And it was a very interesting time. I thought I wouldn't sell many books. I actually sold more books than they thought because people were at home. But I spoke to a Girl Scout troop. I'll never forget, Cherry. I said, and the den mother was a friend of mine, a fellow conscious capitalist in Washington, D.C. And Catherine said, okay, girls, this is the author. On Zoom, you get to ask her any question. This one girl, I will never forget it. She looked at me and she goes, well, I'd just like to know why this isn't already the way business is being done.
Nice. And how did you,
go girl. Yeah.
Yeah. So that was your response to that. Go girl.
Yes. And saying, you're right. That is the right way to think. And with people and young people like you and getting involved, it is going to change even faster. So don't give up. I said, business is changing, and this way of doing business is going to quickly become the norm. So I wanted to infuse them with enthusiasm, but I also wanted to level set, their expectations. I believe very much in educating children. I believe that children are very critical stakeholders in business, and we must not forget it.
So can you talk more about that concept of children as stakeholders?
Absolutely. I have always been impressed by a quote from Frederick Douglass. Frederick Douglass, who was, such a famous 19th century orator and abolitionist, he said something that just and kept bouncing around in my head. It is easier to build strong children than to repair broken men. And I began to really think about that from a business perspective, from being a business leader. And I realized that that is true. And it dovetailed. And then I thought of Riane and her book on children. And I love that you have named this podcast Reimagining Capitalism for Tomorrow's Children, because that is a wonderful kind of synthesis of what we're doing and why we're doing it. And Riane talks about, why economically it is important for us to take care of children and how it starts early. One of the things that I don't think many people did realize is how the first 5 years of a human's life make all the difference for later on. And one data point just blew me away. A toddler's vocabulary at age 3 highly determines their reading ability in the 3rd grade, by the 3rd grade. So we cannot not pay attention to those early years. And Riane has used the term, high human capital, and the fact that we need high quality human capital if we're going to succeed and thrive business-wise, economics-wise. Well, you know what? That happens not by accident. We have to start educating and taking care of children very early on. And it's one of the reasons I've been a very big ambassador for businesses, big businesses, little businesses, having childcare facilities on site, or making it possible for parents to take care of their children as well as do the work they need to do. Business's role right now, I believe, Cherry, is to practice what I'd call preventive medicine. Because when it comes to children, we need to do that, because Frederick Douglass was right. We have seen, all of us, the price of trying to repair broken men rather than building strong children. And it is totally unacceptable, especially if we believe in a conscious capitalism business model.
Beautiful. And what are your hopes in terms of the conscious capitalism movement gaining momentum in these challenging times that we are finding ourselves in?
I will not lie. It is challenging. And we're going to be entering, I think, a period where it's going to be more challenging. We were making progress, but we cannot and must not give up, because I truly believe in community. I believe in the power of partnerships in communities, in business. And business, whether we want to say it or not, capitalism and business is going to play a major role. And there has been progress, Cherry. So I want us to hold on to that. For example, the structure of a business. We did not have a public benefit corporation business model until 2010. That means that in 2010, for the very first time in the United States, Maryland was the first state to make it a legal and an acceptable business designation, to make a company, a for-profit company, called a public benefit corporation. If you've heard the term B Corp and you see the B with the circle, the B Corp movement is part of that. The very first certified B Corp company in the United States was Patagonia, and it was in 2006 that it was made a B Corp. So, and then it took all of us and the community of conscious capitalists and B Corp people until 2010 to get the first state. Just because progress is slow doesn't mean it can't happen. I'm wearing a Patagonia vest today, and let me just tell you, companies like Patagonia are the future. And I am going to put a plug in. If anybody is listening and you don't know what to do, support these companies by buying their product and being an ambassador. Because one of the ways we can change this faster is to all get together and become what I call conscious consumers. Vote for companies you believe in. And I'll say the opposite. Do not vote for companies that are not doing the right thing. I mean, vote with your wallet.
Money. Perfect.
Yeah,
Great.
because
Great.
that's how B Corps, that's how conscious companies are going to survive. Because this triple bottom line, I am a capitalist, as I've said. I believe in making a profit, but I'm a triple bottom line capitalist. I believe profit is important, but profit without a higher purpose than just making money is not the right way to do business. So we have to begin to shift and change. And all of this so perfectly dovetails with Riane's books and philosophy and the movement of partnerism. Partnerism in business is critical, just like it is everywhere else.
You are listening to the Power of Partnership podcast. We hope you are enjoying today's episode and you will consider joining our family of sponsors. Or you can help us attract sponsors by downloading, following, or subscribing to the series and liking and rating each episode you view on YouTube. We also would love to hear from you, including if you have a partnership story that you would like to share. Reach out to us at center@partnershipway.org. And now, back to today's episode. So can you speak a bit about the legislative issues involved with public benefit corporations?
There are now, I believe, and I don't want to misspeak, but I believe there are only 3 states left in the 50 United States that do not allow for a company to be created under public benefit corporation status. So that legislation was hard fought, and it took, people like the founders of the B Corp movement to make that possible, working with all of us who were like-minded. There are still struggles, and we're now seeing, conscious capitalism being maligned, with some people and some organizations and some places in the United States, because they're saying it's woke capitalism or whatever. And they are now saying that diversity and equity and inclusion don't matter, and that sustainable development goals for the UN do not matter. I know they exist, but I really firmly believe, Cherry, that the legal obstacles that we may face going forward are going to, I think, begin to go away because of the power of the new generations who are coming along behind me. I'm a boomer. I spend much of my time speaking to colleges and college students, and I can tell you that they are looking at it differently. And we, conscious capitalism, especially in Southern California where I live, we are working with universities to get those students in the forefront, to give them paid internships, because we are not going to succeed if we don't do what Riane said and get high quality human capital involved. And it is happening. That gives me hope.
So can you speak about the international implications or reach of conscious capitalism?
Yes. And thank you for bringing that up, because conscious capitalism is a movement and it is global. There are 28 chapters in the United States. So it started here and it took hold here first, but there are now 6 global chapters. And I can tell you the conscious capitalism movement is definitely growing in places like Brazil and Ecuador and Peru and Argentina. It is very definitely growing in Europe. And I would add that economists and other people who are thought leaders and game changers like Riane has been are also stepping up. There is a book called Donut Economics by Kate Rayworth. She's a Brit. She's a professor at Oxford. We are now, using her donut economic model in communities all over the world. And integral into that is creating businesses that are caring and conscious and stakeholder driven. So it's working. And because we're so connected globally now, we are able to get initiatives that are working out faster. building a global community is really important. And I am very, very committed to doing that because I've spent my life all over the world in the fashion industry. And I will also say that the United States is behind when it comes to some of these really critical issues, like how we pay people, our health care, and all of that. So we still have a lot of work to do, but we are being helped greatly.
So along those lines of helping the conscious capitalism movement grow, are there resources or suggestions you would have for our audience members who want to learn more or get involved more?
Oh, I absolutely. The easiest thing is to go to the Conscious Capitalism Inc. website. If you Google Conscious Capitalism, you will be directed there. On that website is a lot of information. There's a book about conscious capitalism. It was written by John Mackey and Raj Sisodia about 15 years ago. There is a conscious capitalism field guide. And then, of course, the children's book, because I will tell you that if you're introducing conscious capitalism to someone who's never heard of it, one of the things that we found is that the ABCs can also be titled the ABCs of Conscious Capitalism or Conscious Capitalism for Dummies, because it explains it again like you're explaining it to a 10-year-old, which I keep saying. Let's keep it simple and make it straightforward. So if you want to get involved, there is a lot of information on the website. If anybody, I certainly, your podcast audience is an audience I identify with, I embrace, and I love. So if anybody wants to reach out to me, that is absolutely possible. And I'd be happy to talk to them.
Beautiful. Well, I'll include your contact information in the show notes along with all those resources. And of course, links to Riane Eisler's Chalice and the Blade, Real Wealth of Nations, Tomorrow's Children, and also her newest book, Nurturing Our Humanity, which really talks a lot about that childhood development piece that you referenced. So let's talk now, though, about your experiences in the fashion industry just a bit more. I'm curious, and I suspect our audience would be too, to understand how you navigated some of those domination, really entrenched domination paradigms around body shaming, exploitation, gender stereotypes. Can you speak a bit about that?
My career in the fashion industry has been a tale of two types of capitalism, actually, and work. The fashion industry is, as most of you, or if you don't know, the fashion industry is the second dirtiest industry on our planet after oil. And along with that, not just being dirty, but also creating societal norms that were misleading, wrong, very damaging to the growth and development of young people and their ideas of themselves. So fashion has a lot to answer for. When I started, it was much worse. I will say that, again, young people and the progress we've made, in the communities of being more open and not having this idea of beauty be only one idea and one ideal. It is changing. So even the fashion industry is reflecting that. We are seeing much more less size shaming. We're seeing much more awareness of the multicultural beautiful things that can be created in fashion when you embrace a different way of defining beauty. I am very, very involved in especially how we help young women develop so that they do not look at themselves and see that there's only one way to be beautiful, because there isn't. And modeling it in the way that we're seeing changes on the runway, changes in fashion magazines and fashion spreads, social media. The power of the consumer has really helped bring that about. When I started in fashion, Cherry, we used to tell the customer what to buy, what color was hot, all of that. Those days are gone. The customer tells us right now, and the savvy and smart and conscious and caring fashion brands are responding to that. So it is possible. But I want to spend as much time on how the fashion industry is dirty. It exploits workers, and it has also been so much a contributor to the devastation of our planet and creating and polluting our planet. And there's a documentary I would recommend that everyone take a look at. It is called The True Cost. It was made in 2015 by Andrew Morgan, and it's about the true cost of fashion. And that documentary, I believe if everyone who's listening takes a look at that documentary, you will leave, that at the end of that documentary, you're going to go, I didn't realize. And many of us don't. I am not here to criticize, but I'm here to educate, because I think once you know the truth and you keep doing bad things, that's very different. But we don't think about fashion. Every one of us wakes up every day and puts on clothing or accessories. And we don't spend enough time thinking about where it came from and who made it, what materials were used, and whether that's good for the planet or not. So those times are changing as well. Fashion is changing, but not fast enough for me. So we have to keep the pedal to the metal.
And for younger people coming into the fashion industry, are there models of schools or ways that they're getting trained in how to use their creativity in ways to benefit the fashion world without damaging the planet and further contributing to negative messaging that, the types of challenges that you just are mentioning?
Yes. Even schools like Fashion Institute of Technology in New York or St. Martin's School of Design in London, they are now including, it is now in the curriculum to have courses and present young fashion designers, as well as in business, young people who want to go into the business of fashion, about how to do it differently. I am on the board of advisors for the Joan B. Kroc School of Peace Studies here in San Diego at USD. We are now adding courses specifically in the business school and in the Joan Kroc School of Peace Studies, because it's not just about peace and justice and conflict resolution, it's how to prevent those things. So business has to start putting it into the curriculum. Fashion schools have to do it. And this B Corp movement, let me just say, fashion brands are now certified B Corps, even luxury brands, or even, brands that you wouldn't think of. So it is now not at the tipping point we need, but it is approaching it. And I think with the help of academics and business leaders partnering, it can happen faster.
Lovely. So back to the concept of voting with your money and understanding corporations that are B Corps and wanting to give your business to them. How do consumers learn which companies are rated as B Corps or not so that they can vote with their money?
Oh, good question. Again, if you go on Google or, do a search for certified B Corps and public benefit corporations, you put those two keyword phrases in, you'll get an enormous amount of information. And the B Corps are very, very transparent. So, for example, in almost every big city, there is a community of B Corp companies who get together, and it's the B Local community. In San Diego County, there are 46 B Corps. But I'm going to say that every state has some version right now of a B Corp community. And if you go online, you can key in who are the certified B Corp fashion brands, who are just the certified B Corp brands. Ben & Jerry's, Patagonia, Eileen Fisher, Athleta, Allbirds. You can look at any company and you kind of know by their culture. It's a report card of whether they're caring or conscious. And I would encourage, again, we all have an obligation as consumers, Cherry, to know more and be more informed and educated about where we spend our money and buy and what we buy and why we buy it. And in fashion, The first thing is don't buy fast fashion. I'm going to be very clear right now. The fast fashion industry is like crack cocaine. It's deadly, it's addictive, and it's hurting everyone, including our planet. There are enough alternatives now that you don't have to. So let's all work together on this. It is possible. We have power. The power of partnership really could happen here in the fashion industry if we all got together.
And I'm not familiar with that term, fast fashion. Can you describe what you mean by that?
It's cheap and made badly and made with raw materials that are not sustainable. It's not produced sustainably. And I don't usually name, but H&M, Zara, the Temu, Shine, these companies are doing exponentially more and more damage. We have run out of places to put the excess clothing. Landfills all over the planet can't take it anymore. We have got to start thinking about buying smarter and buying less. It's just not going to work if we don't start thinking about that.
So, Laura, before we end our conversation, I wonder if you have any final words that you'd like to share with our audience today.
There is hope. It is time, I believe, for us to get together and embrace our hope together. I am of the opinion, just like Margaret Mead said, that, a small group of people can do anything, because in fact, that's how most progress on our planet has actually occurred. And I would ask us, all of us, and I do it, I try to do it now, is to sit and think about what you can do. You may not be able to change the world, but you can change your world. And I would encourage all of us to think about our legacy, because we all, I believe, have an obligation to our future generations. John F. Kennedy said that children are the living messages we send to a time we will not see. That is true. But we must begin to plant those seeds, even if we will not be around to see them grow into trees. It's our responsibility and a privilege to make sure that happens, and to continue the work of Riane, because she is part and parcel of the solution. Her work will help keep us all informed and motivated and on track.
Beautiful. Well, thank you so much, Laura, for being here today.
You're so welcome. I enjoyed it. And thank you, Cherry, for the valuable work you're doing. Thank you.
My pleasure.
Thank you for listening to the Power of Partnership podcast. We're grateful to Rising Appalachia for the use of resilience as our Power of Partnership theme music. If you would like us to feature your partnership story, or if you would like to be a proud sponsor of the Power of Partnership podcast, please contact us at center@partnershipway.org. We hope you enjoyed this episode and will leave us a review on your favorite podcast channel. And don't forget to subscribe to be notified when new episodes are released. I'm Cherry Jacobs Pruitt. See you next time on the Power of Partnership podcast.
I am resilient. I trust the movement. I negate the chaos. Uplift the negative. I'll show up at the table again and again and again. I'll close my mouth and learn to live.